The newest model introduced in the King Lion series that has been around since the days of Meteorot 2, and the only current female in the line of successors over the many years the line has been around. This is KLN05 Warbonetototo, with a completely new kit across the board of power plant, collide shot, full Gatling, biped legs, and the leg ability of Lamplight, which is a brand new leg ability that buffs power of all equipped parts by 1000 for a certain number of actions relative to the leg's part rank. And this ability kicks in from the time the battle says go. Now, much like Smilo Lulu was with her twin sister focusing on a massive boost to evade stat where literally nothing else ever in the game's history has scaled upon it, Warbonetoto, as I will affectionately call her going forward, definitely stands in line as of the King Lion type legacy, focusing on higher power or even piercing round artillery, to the point that Warbonetoto's entire kit can be summarized in 3 words: armor-piercing rounds. And boy, does she live up to that title with everything she's bringing to the table. The head part of Power Plant is a brand new setup skill being introduced into the game, which allows the user to put down a passive plant on the field much like they might heater or cooler plant, but this one instead buffs power by 10% for every plant currently active on the field. And given that you can stick down a maximum of 3 of these at once, that means that everybody on the field, as long as these plants are active and they are not removed, everyone on the field on your side of the field gets a 30% damage dealt bonus just for existing. And that is the first thing that Warbonetoto brings to the table, is the fact that she plays fairly well with others, being able to slap this down and give everybody a damage plus boost just for existing. Collide Shot on the right arm is a brand new shooting skill being introduced in the game, which scales on the targeted opponent's stats, much like a lot of other things do, but this one starts targeting them in a ways that it's going to really hurt, especially in the current rounds of competitive meta. Simply explained, Collide Shot is a defense-ignoring piercing attack that gets bonus damage that scales relative to the target's combined melee and shoot resist. Put in layman's terms, the stronger and the bulkier the target when shooting, the more powerful the armor-piercing round gets. And in competitive meta, we're packing a lot of specs with, say, heavy arms, or high fly, or double edge, or darkness, where those specs really come in handy. Collide Shot is now the perfect counter to pierce through any defense just for existing, and punching through any kind of wall they try to put up against her. Full Gatling on the left arm is another brand new skill, which basically and simply surmised is more or less just a shooty version of Full Claw, where it is a basic Gatling attack with a scatter effect, meaning it will damage one part normally and others at random, but instead of only hitting 3 times, Full Gatling hits 5 times. This means, much like her sister Smilo Lulu, Warbonetoto is also capable of very casually punching through and brute forcing any shield that stands in her way. Basic guard, Zetai guard, perfect guard, counter guard, guard 500, guard 300, anything that dares come up to try to block her will be instantly shut down and brute forced with one move, because it hits 5 times and each hit shreds 1 charge of a guard stance. So, granted, this does mean that, say, mirror guard will end up curbing her fairly quickly, but in every other guard that counts, they will not stand much longer as long as she stays on the field. Biped legs means that Warbonetoto will have very solid coverage on all terrains with a fairly good leg terrain compatibility lineup, and her leg stats across the board are actually pretty solid too, with a very good emphasis on fairly good speed and resistances across the board. With a base mobility of 937, she's definitely off on a very strong foot when it comes to her base speed before anything else comes into effect. An evade of 1046 isn't too shabby. She can dodge her grades essentially as she needs and as she's able to. but a melee resist of 1146 and a shoot resist of over 1700 are both very good numbers, especially that shoot resist. This means that while she can definitely hold her own with anyone that gets in her personal space, she is definitely capable of long extended survival rounds with taking enemy fire from afar and even returning it double fold, especially given with the kind of specs that she's packing. In the armor department, she is surprisingly bulky across the board too, and everything but the legs in a very weird turn of events. With a head armor of 4379, arms at 4679 apiece, and legs at just barely 4200, she is surprisingly healthy for a KLN Type 2, especially for the high artillery emphasis that she's bringing to the table. This means that combined with her fairly good resist stats across the board, she's able to hold her own remarkably well and tank hits decently well without anything crippling her too quickly. And with very impressive heating and cooling stats across the board, both of her arms in the high 600s to mid 700s each, and power plant at over 950 in heating and over almost 850 in cooling, there's going to be very little that's going to be able to interrupt or get in her way as far as setting up and punching holes in anything that does dare try to stand against her. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I very, very confidently have to rate Warbonetototo as a very solid 9 out of 10 across the board. She is extremely self-synergetic unto herself, yet at the same time, she is just as friendly to any friendly allies that are sub-DPS on the team because of power plant. She can choose to do that and start around with power plant to get those charges up and running, or she can basically just shoot from the hip with collide shot or full Gatling right from turn 1 and really not see any difference overall. But that also is because of the leg ability of Lamplight, which buffs power by 1000 for a certain number of turns. Simply explained, this buff is active right from turn 1. You don't need to activate it for anything, and it simply lasts a certain number of turns relative to part rank. This means at rank 6 legs, it'll last 4 turns before it expires, and the modifiers go back down to basic numbers. But given what she's capable of, I really don't think she needs all that extra 1000 if the enemy's even still alive after that, if I'm being completely honest. But it does synergize extremely well with everything she brings to the table. However, the only real problem to bring with Warbonetoto is the fact that, much like any other model of the KLN series, she is very shoot-oriented, which means if you want to curb her quickly, the best way to do it is to break the arms, and the easiest way to do that is anything with Shoot Trap. Shoot Trap, Shoot TC, or even Shoot Trap A if you have Anime Smilodon will curb this King Lion sooner than later if you are not faster than her, if you manage to get faster than her and put it down faster than she can fire the trigger. But in all other situations, she is extremely self-synergetic and a very powerful shoot DPS on any team she's on. As mixed parts, I do have to rate her equally for these same reasons. Collide Shot and Full Gatling are pretty self-explanatory with what they bring to the table. Power Plant honestly has a lot of very wide array of uses with what it can do basically anywhere, given that it buffs power directly up to 3 stacks at a maximum of 30%. So that is honestly really good with what it brings to the table. And Lamplight, based on description, does not discriminate if it's between shooting and melee, which means this leg ability could also have a lot of very high use in mixed build scenarios, either melee or shooting. For instance, think of Max Shot with Lamplight, or say Power Sword, or Beam Sword, or Slash with Lamplight, or something similar. Well, that extra 1000 would be just enough to curb anything that stands in your way.